She held her elbow and shook her. Wine glanced at her coldly. "I'll not marry him," she emphasized each word and pushed away her mom's hand. Mrs. Lee let out a sigh. "What's wrong with you? The world doesn't end on Matthew. 𝐿 is more handsome and nice than him. I have no interest in him. It doesn't matter to me if he's handsome or not." She spoke, staring at the invisible point blankly. "𝐿 is ready to marry you. He is even wealthier than Matthew." Wine stared at her with disbelief and chuckled bitterly. "Wow, wealthier. Why are you so greedy? I feel ashamed to call you my mother." In the past, she wasn't affected by Wine's words, but these days, she felt as if someone pierced her chest with a dagger. Mrs. Lee composed herself and smiled. "I see you can't face Matthew, right? You don't dare to face him after he married someone else. After all, he will think of you as pathetic, no doubt." Wine's gaze turned dark. She clenched her fist, digging her nails into her palm, causing her knuckles to turn white. Mrs. Lee smiled internally, knowing she hit her weak spot. Wine remained silent, trying hard to control her rage. "Anyways, if you shed tears or bleed your eyes out, I don't care. You'll marry him or else. Don't forget your precious boxes with me. I'll burn it if you try to act smart." Wine snapped back to prison and threw everything from the dressing table. She was boiling in rage. The door burst open, revealing him. "What happened?" he asked with a frown and closed the door, moving closer to her. "Stay away." She raised her voice and threw the coffee table. He stared at her confusingly. "What's wrong with you? Have you lost your mind?" He growled and held her arm, pulling her closer. "Yes, I have lost my mind. I'm insane. Did you know that before marrying me? Why did you marry me?" She grabbed his collar. The rage that she had bottled up for a few days, that unfortunately she was taking out on him. "Because my parents wanted me to." He held her hands. "No one has dared to come here." He pushed her hands with a slight jerk. "Calm down and tell me what's wrong." His tone softened, seeing her teary eyes, but Wine blinked them away. "My mom forced me to marry you. I didn't want to. She didn't know why she told him this. Maybe she wanted to take it out." She took deep breaths. "Really? I didn't know about it. I know it is hard for you to accept your fiancé's brother whom you barely know." He spoke calmly. Wine closed her eyes and dragged a long breath. Then stared at her intently. "We'll split up soon." He raised his brows and leaned closer to her. "Don't even think about it. We just got married today," he said in a serious tone. "Don't toss her up. We, who are you?" She passed him a death stare. "I'm your husband, wife." He encircled his arm around her waist and pulled her closer. "I have a gift for you, but you already changed." He said, shaking his head, while wiggled in his embrace. "Move away, pervert." He slid out a box from his pants and placed it on the dressing table. "Have a look." He released her from his grip and turned around, taking off his coat and rolling up his sleeves. "Hey, listen, you sleep on the couch and I'll sleep on the bed." He turned to face her and raised his brows amusingly. "You're quite interesting. It would be fun," he said with a smirk and plopped on the bed on his stomach while Wine climbed on the bed. "Hey, move away." She tried to push him, but he didn't even budge. Then grinned, making her blood boil in rage. She slightly punched him in the back. "Wifey, why not just lie on me? I won't mind it, believe me." He lay straight and pulled her towards him. "Leave me, pervert." Her heartbeat raced to his proximity. Wine had never been this close to anyone, not even Matthew. "I'm really innocent," he said with an innocent expression. "Just go and change. Why are you lying here?" She glared at him, trying to shoo him away. Then pulled the door to cover himself. "I'm fine like this." Wine knew he was doing it to annoy her, and he was successful in it. The whole night they spent pushing and pulling each other. Time skip. Wine and him spent all the time bickering with each other. She made sure to irritate him as much as possible, but instead he irritates her. Wine realized him is different from Matthew. He's usually stern, silent and aloof. Wine hasn't seen Matthew yet. These days her mom is continuously calling her and telling her to come over. She ignored her calls a few times, but then she decided to see her as she wanted her box. But she was ready to go when Tim stopped her. "Where are you going?" he asked, playing game on his phone intently. "To see Mom." She spoke dryly, then slid his phone into his pocket and stood. "I'll drop you," he said, coming towards her. Wine frowned and stared at him. "Why would you go with me? Can't I see my mother-in-law? I must thank her as well for giving her the blue and pulled his hair, making him groan. "You witch, I have just done my hair," he hissed. One stroked her shoulders, then pulled her hair as a revenge. "Bloody jerk, my hair," she said on the verge of crying and rubbing her head. "Was it that bad? I didn't mean to pull them hard." "I'm sorry," he spoke gently and leaned closer to have a look. One shook her head and stepped backward, then held her and caressed her head. One's breathing quickened due to such close proximity to him. His warm breath had tickled her ear and cheek, the tingly feeling spreading throughout her body. "It's fine." She freed herself from his grip and said, her cheeks turned crimson. Without looking back, Wine walked out while Them followed. All the way throughout the drive, Wine sternly told him not to come inside the house and that she would be back in 2 to 5 minutes. Wine entered the house looking around. Her eyes landed on the scattered bottles of medicines and water. "Wine, you're here." Her weak voice caught Wine's attention. She looked at the sofa where Mrs. Lee was lying and staring at her with teary eyes. "Where is my box?" she asked in a serious tone. "Wine, I'm not well. Can you please give me these medicines and water?" she mumbled. The sight of her vulnerable state was quite pitiful, but Wine didn't feel any pity for her. "Where have you kept the box?" She moved closer. Mrs. Lee closed her eyes while tears rolled down her eyes. Wine clenched her fist and let out a sigh. "It's in the basement, under that heap." Wine picked the medicines and poured the water from the jug placed on the coffee table. "Why are you so heartless? You know how important it is for me, don't you?" She handed her the water and medicine and spoke, raising her voice. "Wine, I'm not well," she said in a low tone. Wine fight back her tears. "That's what you deserve. This is karma. Endure it." She hit the coffee table. "I know I have done wrong," she cut in. "No, you didn't do wrong. You sinned. You made me a sinner as well. I'm guilty as well for what you did. How could you do that? Don't you have a heart? Didn't you feel pain seeing innocent lives burning into ashes?" She cried and yelled. Mrs. Lee sobbed silently. Wine turned around but froze, seeing Them staring at her with a serious gaze. His gaze averted to Mrs. Lee's fragile figure. She didn't seem well. Wine walked towards the basement while Them silently went to Mrs. Lee. He sent Mrs. Lee to the hospital. Since they had returned home, Wine had locked herself in the room. He could hear her faint sobs. Them went to the room and opened the door with spare keys. Wine was staring at the pictures in her hands while weeping. She stood startled as soon as she saw Them. "I want to be alone, please go out." She wiped her face and kept away the pictures. Them moved closer to her. "Your mom is not well," he said in a low tone. She clenched her fist. "She's not going to die anytime soon. She's just paying for her evil deeds." She sobbed and yelled at him. "She's your mom." Wine grabbed his collar. "Why is she my mom? Why?" She released him with a jerk and cried hard. Them was speechless. He felt as if his heart melted into a puddle. Never did he realize her vulnerable state would leave such a huge impact on him. He hushed her. That was how it was written. He spoke gently. It was during that time a ray of lightning suddenly flashed in the sky, followed by a loud thunder crack. The sudden piercing noise made her scream. She covered her ears and crouched down on the floor. Cold sweat drenched her body as she trembled. He was shocked by her response. Without hesitation, Them crouched down in front of her and covered her hands with his over her ears. "I'm scared of thunder." Wine was still shivering. She hadn't heard him at all. The sound of the thunder continued, followed by a strong wind blowing. Them stood to close the balcony door. As the thunder stopped for a while, she swiftly stood. "Where are my earphones? Where are they?" She mumbled, still shivering, and walked to the drawer. Them stood behind her to help her search for them. She finally found it and inserted it in her ears when another lightning flashed with a loud thunder while the lights blacked out. The noise was loud. It felt like a crater had split open on the surface of the earth. With a scream, Wine turned around and bumped into a warm body. She reacted as if she bumped into driftwood while struggling in ocean. She used all her might to cling onto his waist. Then covered her ears with his hands. She sobbed while her body was as cold as ice. Wine calmed after a few moments. She was still holding him silently, listening to his heartbeat. Soon she came back to her senses and pulled out embarrassingly. "I'm sorry," she mumbled and turned on the loud music on her phone. "I'll go and check why the lights blacked out." He A glint of hope appeared in their eyes. They were telling me to open the window, but I couldn't reach it. I went to look for something to break the window, but just in a few minutes the cylinder in the house burst, and my mom killed them. She wept. I stared at her in disbelief. She had done it all. When she saw me there, she threatened me she would kill Dad as well if I told anyone about it. Later on, I learned Marco was my half-brother. My mother separated Dad and his mom by creating a misunderstanding. When Dad discovered Mom's lies, he went back to Marco's mom and was planning for a divorce, but before that, Mom killed them. Dad also passed away soon after that. I was left alone with the guilt of being their murderer as well. I could have saved them. She sobbed hysterically. I moved closer and pulled her upper body towards him, holding her tightly. "It's okay, you tried your best to save them." He mumbled, gently stroking her hair. "You were just 8. How do you expect an 8-year-old to save someone?" He tried to console her. One held tightly onto him. "I lost my innocence, my dad, my brother, my friend, and my childhood because of her. This bitterness in me is all because of it. I never even had any friends other than Matthew." She mumbled over his chest. He caressed her hair until she calmed down. They remained silent with lots of thoughts running in their minds. Wayne pulled away, noticing her position. "I'm sorry I ruined your shirt." He pulled her back. "It's okay, let it be." She laid back, placing her head on his chest while her forehead touched the side of his neck. "Do you feel good now?" She nodded, tightening her grip around him. "Wayne," she hummed in response, "don't you think we should make our marriage work?" She lifted her head and stared at him. "Do you want to spend the rest of your life with me?" He placed his hand on her face and gently caressed it. "I seem to like you." She raised her brows. "But I'm stubborn. I get angry in seconds. I cry easily. I'm extremely possessive. I'm clingy. I have trust issues and I can't control any of my emotions. Do you still want to think?" His lips curled up into a small smile. "I accept you with everything. I don't mind anything. But you're Matthew's brother." She rubbed her nose against his. He cut in. "I'm Matthew's brother, not Matthew." She smiled, resting her head on his chest. "Did you love him?" "He was a good friend of mine. None of us loved each other. We just thought we understood each other so we could spend the rest of our lives peacefully. I wanted to stay away from him, so I decided to marry him, but he didn't know anything about the past." Claire just nodded, kissing her head. She felt herself extremely touched. It filled her with so much happiness and warmth. "It's happy life with him. She just heard from Theon that her mother has been diagnosed with cancer, but Wayne couldn't care less about her. Today Wayne called Theon and told him to come home early. No, Theon had alarmed home, but Wayne was nowhere in the house. He called her. However, she didn't answer the call. Instead, she texted him saying she would be home in a few minutes. They went to wash up until she returned. After 20 minutes, he came out shirtless, rubbing a towel over his wet hair and searching for his shirt when his phone beeped with a notification. He kept away the towel and picked up his phone. It was a text from Wayne saying, "I have a surprise for you. Just wait for a few more minutes." His lips curved into a smile, shaking his head. "What is it, my angry bird?" He replied to her text, but she sent angry emojis instead and left him unseen. Theon chuckled. He was so immersed in his phone that he didn't even notice someone entering the room until a familiar pair of hands sneaked around his bare waist. He flinched and turned around, getting free from her grip. "What the hell?" he said with unpleasant expressions. "I'm back, Theon." She spoke with seductive smirk and moved her hand closer to his face. "Stay away from me, get lost from here." He spoke with disgust. "I know I shouldn't have left you for Carlos, but now I'm back." He stared at her with disbelief. "I don't want you. I'm married and you left Carlos because he suffered a great loss in his business. As if I don't know how greedy you are. Bloody gold digger, get lost from here before I lose my temper," he said, looking around for his shirt. Suzanne held him by the arm and turned him to face her. "How can you get married? Didn't you love me?" she said with fake tears holding his face. He released himself with a jerk from her grip. "Don't touch me. You make me sick to my stomach. I was bloody blind to have someone like you in my life. You." He stopped, seeing Wayne staring at them blankly. Both of them hadn't noticed her presence. "Wayne," she came forward. Susan stared at her. "She is your wife. Look at what your husband did. He called me in your absence. Wayne slap cut her words off. Susan gasped, feeling a burning sensation on her cheek. "How dare you?" she muttered through clenched jaw and raised her hand to hit Wayne, but Sam held her hand in air and twisted it. Susan's expressions pained. "Leave her hand." Sam stared at her dumbfounded. Wayne passed him a glare and went to bring his shirt while Sam released Susan with sir. Wayne brought him a shirt. Sam kept seeing her menacing expressions. "Will you leave or do I have to beat the shit out of you and throw you out?" Susan clenched her fist. Wayne cut in. "Don't you dare utter my husband's name from your filthy mouth. I won't spare you if you try to accuse him of something else." She held her by the elbow and threw her out of the house. When Wayne returned, he was properly seated as if he had an interview. Wayne sat in front of him and stared at him dead. Then cleared his throat. "Was she your ex?" He nodded, pursing his lips. "You never told me you had an ex." "I didn't think it was necessary. She was my past, but you are my present." Wayne nodded and stood. "Ex," she muttered and kicked the coffee table. A sudden reaction caught him off guard. He swiftly stood and moved closer to her. "You stood in front of her shirtless. She touched you." Wayne poked his chest with her index finger. "Don't you trust me?" he asked, holding her hand. "It's not about trust. I do trust you, but she touched you." Knew her extremely possessive self had taken over her. "I'm sorry," he mumbled and embraced her in a hug, but she wiggled in his grip, trying to push him away. "Leave me," she cried, hitting him on the chest, but Theon didn't loosen his grip. "I swear I'll kill you both." He pulled her even closer. "I'm all yours. Kill me if that makes you happy," he whispered into her ear. She saw resting her head on his chest. "I want to skin her alive," she muttered through gritted teeth. "I'll help you with it, don't worry." He kissed her head, stroking her hair gently to calm her. After a while, Theon spoke, making sure she was calm enough to talk. "What surprise do you have for me?" She swiftly pulled out. Her eyes glistened once more. "Don't you dare cry. You have no idea what I would do if you spilled a tear again over unimportant things." She bit her lips and sniffed. "Now tell me what's it." He cupped her face gently and asked. "I think I'm pregnant," she mumbled. Then stared at her in a daze. "What do you mean you think?" She shook her head, sniffing. "No, I don't think. I know. I'm sure. I went to the doctor." She mumbled and began crying. He stared at her worriedly. "What's wrong? Why are you crying? Aren't you happy?" "I'm happy," she barely whispered. "But she ruined it." He let out a sigh and held her close to his chest. "No, ruin anything. Stop crying." She pulled up, staring at him. "What?" One began rubbing his letting her wipe as she pleased. After being satisfied with it, Ryan brought shopping bags. I bought these clothes for our babies. They're both boys and girl stuff. She sat beside him. I'm extremely happy. He wrapped his arm around her shoulder. Ryan placed her head on his shoulder and intertwined her fingers with his. I'm scared, Tim. What if I would be a terrible mother? She kissed his hand